Good morning. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner for this morning's requested amendment to an existing CPD. The case number is DCI 2024-00019. One point of clarification before the applicant begins. I noticed that the request, or the original request, was for 2240 square foot building. But the recommendation is for 2,000 and the MCP seems to refer to 2,000. Have you amended your request to 2,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. And then one other question, it has to do with minimum street setbacks. I noticed that it says 25 feet, but deviation 4 says 15 feet from Laurel Lane, so shouldn't that minimum be 15?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm confirming that the MCP that I received 2 days ago with the 48-hour letter, it says last revised, the notation says January 20th, 2025. Is that correct, or do you have a stamped version that is more appropriate to rely on?
I do not have a stamped version.
Okay, so the notes, when it says lists all the revisions, the last revision I saw was January 20th. Will you confirm that that's the appropriate date to refer to?
I know, I'm looking at it. That's one,
It's right there.
I know.
The title block.
I did make one minor alteration since I sent that to Mary Sue. And the only thing that I did was I changed the deviation number under building setbacks. But that's this.
I'm getting an updated master concept plan today.
ma'am.
And what is the date it was last revised?
I didn't change the date. Sorry.
You didn't change the list of notations when you made a change?
No, but I can email that to you if that's.
Yeah, if you would do that, just
Yes.
to avoid confusion, because I don't want Maria to attach the wrong version.
Yeah.
And now we've got 3, so, okay.
I just changed it yesterday as I was making the reviewing my PowerPoint and presentation. I noticed that although I renumbered the deviations on the master concept plan, I didn't carry that over to the notes on the side.
Okay, so this one is superseded. I got nothing. I got this little thing here. So there'll be a 5th entry on this list.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll have it dated yesterday, the 29th.
And do you think you can get that to us today?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. All right, I'm ready to begin.
Madam Hearing Examiner, if I could briefly interrupt, I just want to get on the record. I do have the affidavit of publication that this hearing has been advertised.
Yes, and this will be staff exhibit number 2. Staff exhibit number 1 is the staff report.
Thank you.
Let me just mark this and we will be ready. All right.
Veronica Martin, Senior Planner with TDM Consulting, representing the applicant, Terra Firma Ventures, LLC. I have been accepted as an expert witness in the lead plan and the land development code previously, and I asked to be accepted as such again today.
Yes.
I do have one exhibit I would like to enter into the record this morning, and that is a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation.
That will be applicant exhibit 1.
I did have one gentleman reach out to me after receiving his notice to the surrounding property owners, Mr. Ronald Lucas, who resides at 2235 Laurel Lane, which is just 3 lots to the west of the subject property. He was confused as to what the notice was for, So I explained to him, and he was fine. He didn't have any objections, but he did say he would not be able to attend today's hearing. The 0.33 acre property is located at 2265 Laurel Lane in the North Fort Myers Planning Community Area, as outlined in red on the exhibit. This community is known as Suncoast Estates. The property is located at the southwest corner of Laurel Lane and Hart Drive, both which are county-maintained major collector roads. The applicant's requesting to amend the master concept plan, the permitted schedule of uses, and the schedule of deviations associated with the commercial plan development approved by zoning resolution Z-89-091A. The maximum square footage requested is 2,000 square feet with a maximum building height of 30 feet. That's a slight reduction in both square footage and height from the original CPD. A total of 4 deviations are being requested. Staff did recommend approval of this request with conditions, and the applicant is in agreement with the staff report and those conditions as well. The property has a future land use classification of suburban as shown in the gold. The surrounding properties also have the same future land use classification. Surrounding zoning consists of MH1 and C1A to the west, MH3 and C1 to the north, MH1, CPD, and C-1A to the east, and MH1 to the south. I did an exhibit for approximate commercial uses along Laurel Lane. Again, it is identified as a major collector road in this area of Suncoast Estates. Commercial uses have been located along Laurel Lane to serve the community through rezonings to both, via both conventional and plan development rezonings. Nearby uses consist of gas stations, convenience stores, food stores, and markets. There's a car care center and a roofing contractor, and then several properties with commercial zoning that are vacant at this time.
I think I had that roofing contractor.
AMS Roofing?
Yeah, that was adjacent to this price site, right?
It is here.
No, was it that, or was it?
It was adjacent to another.
It was a
one that we
pool.
did.
Yes, this one, this one here, I rezoned.
Tennis maintenance facility.
Tennis court maintenance
Tennis
facility.
maintenance
Yep,
facility.
That's us.
we did that one too.
That was me as well.
Yep.
So this
Same team.
little cluster of lots is turning into a node there.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The applicant did propose a very limited schedule of uses, removing the previous use of lawnmower repair shop. He intends to develop the property as a food market, which will include carry-out prepared foods. The primary use is food store group 1 with the ancillary uses of restaurants, limited to carry-out only, an ATM machine, signs, fences, and essential services. The master concept plan has been designed for the proposed use with the neighborhood and the existing neighbors in mind, and to comply with the requirements of the Land Development Code to the maximum extent possible. The lot is only 0.33 acres, which is only 14,500 square feet. The proposed building, again, is 2,000 square feet with a maximum height of 30 feet. A minimum.
Plan is for like just a little neighborhood grocery market?
Absolutely, absolutely. We did provide a minimum of 40% open space, which is double the 20% required for a small commercial development. Access to the site, to the property, is going to be from Hart Drive, with the driveway located as far south of the intersection as possible. The building is located along the west property line and will have 2 public facades, one facing Laurel Lane and one facing Hart Drive. A total of 8 parking spaces are provided, along with pedestrian access internal to the site and along both Laurel Lane and Hart Drive. Proposed buffers include a 15-foot wide Type D buffer along each right-of-way. The Type D buffer requires 5 trees per 100 linear feet and a double staggered hedgerow to be maintained at 36 inches high. A 15-foot wide Type C buffer with an 8-foot-high wall is proposed to the west abutting a small residential lot. The building will act as the buffer wall at this location with a condition that no doors or windows be located on the west facade. A type C buffer requires 5 trees and 18 shrubs per 100 linear feet. There's also a cross-section exhibit attached to the master concept plan. A 14-foot wide buffer with an 8-foot-high wall is proposed along the south property line where it abuts an existing large residential lot. The vegetation required for this buffer will comply with Land Development Code Section 33-1543 in the North Fort Myers Community Plan. Other details on the master concept plan include the dumpster pad, which is here, the loading zone there, preliminary drainage details, and the location for the septic drain field, which is there. And Lee County DOT also wanted us to provide a cross-access easement, which is there, for potential future rezoning of the property to the south. So that's what you're seeing on the master concept plan. Again, we did request 4 deviations. Deviation number 1 seeks relief from Land Development Code 10-285, which requires a minimum connection separation of 330 feet on major collector roads in future suburban areas. Due to the size of the lot and the proximity to the intersection, the applicant is requesting a deviation to permit the connection separation to be 101 feet. Staff did recommend approval of this deviation. Deviation number 2 seeks relief from Land Development Code Section 33-1542, which is the requirement that any structure other than a single-family attached or duplex must have a minimum setback of 50 feet between the nearest points on a building and an existing large lot residential subdivision. The commercial building in the residentially zoned property to the south has a 29-foot setback. Again, due to the small size of the lot, it isn't possible to provide a 50-foot building setback and then still meet the other requirements of the Land Development Code. So we did work with staff on the building setbacks and the buffers for this development. And staff did recommend approval. Deviation number 3 seeks relief from Land Development Code Section 33-1543A, the requirement that landscape buffers for high-intensity developments abutting a subdivided lot in an existing large lot residential subdivision must utilize a 30-foot wide buffer width. The applicant is requesting the buffer width to be only 14 feet. However, we are providing an 8-foot-high solid opaque wall along the south property line.
So this is considered high intensity?
All commercial developments in North Fort Myers are considered high intensity. That's just the section of the code. But I agree, it's makes you question that.
So now, if the circumstances arise that that cross easement must be utilized, then there will be a gap placed into the fence? Or
Yes,
the fence
ma'am,
could
but
be removed, maybe?
The fence could be removed if the property to the south is rezoned and
Commercial.
redeveloped for commercial
Right,
use.
okay.
And I just went back to the master concept plan, so.
Because if I recall that, well, no, that property's small too, okay.
It is. So here's the buffer wall. It attaches to the proposed building and then connects to the buffer wall to the south.
Right, I see.
And again, this will be, as developed, it will be a solid opaque wall.
Right.
That in the future, that wall will have to go away. The North Fort Myers section in Chapter 33 does have specific landscaping requirements, including an increase in the size of the vegetation, which the applicant will provide at time of development order permitting. The 8-foot wall is proposed to further buffer and screen the abutting residential property from any impacts associated with this commercial use. Deviation number 4 seeks relief from Land Development Code Section 34-2192, which is the requirement that all buildings and structures must be set back a minimum of 25 feet from the adjacent street easement or right-of-way. And the applicant is requesting to permit the building setback to be 15 feet from the Laurel Lane right-of-way. This small lot does affect the applicant's ability to comply with every requirement of the Land Development Code. The applicant did work with staff, including Lee County DOT staff, on the deviations to reduce the number and provide deviations that would enhance the objectives of the planned development.
So with regard to the reduced setbacks, the buffers will be, the composition of the buffer will be code compliant?
Yes, ma'am.
Just the width
That is correct. So
requesting a deviation?
right here, we're doing the 15-foot wide minimum code required buffer, but instead of having a 25-foot building setback, where it's actually only going to be 15, the same as the buffer width. And as you can see, there's an 8-foot wide sidewalk along Laurel Lane that's already constructed. And then this is actually the edge of pavement. So there's
Right.
quite a bit of space. And then we're proposing to construct the 5-foot wide sidewalk on Hart Drive. And then we have the pedestrian connection here. That actually concludes the presentation of the master concept plan. I do want to turn this over to Dean, who's going to talk to you about and present the traffic impact study, the drainage plan, and utilities for this site. And then I will wrap up with the lead plan compliance and answer any questions you may have.
Good morning. Dean Martin with TDM Consulting. I've previously been accepted as an expert in civil site design and would like to be considered again today.
Yes, please proceed.
Great. I want to briefly discuss traffic, drainage, and utilities. As previously stated, we are proposing a full access driveway on Hart Drive. It's a full access connection. Hart Drive is a county maintained collector with a posted speed limit of 30 miles an hour. Per the 11th edition of the ITE trip generation manual using land use code 851 for convenience stores, the property generates 140 peak trips in the AM hour and 110 in the PM peak hour. But with using pass-by allowances allowed by Lee County Land Development Code, we reduce the trips that actually generated on the road down to 69 for the AM peak and 54 for the PM peak. Turn lanes will be evaluated during the DO process, but a quick check of the warrants for turn lanes show that we will not be required to do a turn lane because of the low posted speed limit on Hart Drive. And as Veronica stated, Laurel Lane is a major collector. It's being indirectly accessed and has a level of service C, which will not be impacted negatively by the extra trips generated by the project. And this is per the last concurrency report by Lee County Department of Transportation.
I imagine you'll get a fair amount of foot traffic too, given the composition of that area. I did a site visit yesterday, and it seems as though a number of given the use that's requested, a number of the residents in the area might just like walk over.
I agree, and I think these numbers are a little exaggerated based on the ITE manual because these are done in more urban environments typically. So I think 140 trips, 110. I think if we generate that much, I think he's going to need to go a second story or expand because.
Well, and plus you did a very conservative by evaluating 2,240 square foot. It's actually smaller than that.
Correct. We didn't change it So it would be a little bit less, not substantially less, but it would be a little bit less based on the current square footage of 2,000. It'd be down to maybe 120 and 100 for the peaks, and then down at below it'd be like 60 and 50.
Just given the character of the area, it seems like you'll have a fair amount of foot and bicycle traffic to that.
And there's a nearby bus stop, so that people could, it's easily for traversed by pedestrians and bicyclists, yes. As shown on the MCP, which is on the screen, all stormwater runoff from the impervious surfaces will be routed to the proposed interconnected dry detention areas. Once water quality is achieved, we have proposed a control structure in that location that discharges to a roadside swell that's existing along Laurel Lane. We believe we'll be meeting the water quality requirements for the county given these interconnected detention areas. If we don't, we'll provide supplemental underground storage chambers to supplement the above ground.
When is that determined?
During the DO, it depends on several factors: soil storage, where the water table is, and we just haven't got that far during the zoning. But we think this is enough.
Right now, the plan is perimeter dry detention areas graded to this control structure, which then outfalls onto the roadside swirl.
Correct. Even if we do the underground chambers, they'll be in the parking lot, and so the first flush will go into the chambers, and then it'll outfall into the surrounding. So it'll complement and supplement the drainage on the surface.
Now, there's no water treatment in the underground chambers. It's just a collection vehicle, and then it bleeds it out.
It collects it, and it's for the volume that we need, correct? It doesn't really provide any kind of nutrient uptake or anything like that, like the swales do.
And that'll occur in the perimeter swales.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And per the latest survey, the site is in AE 14 flood zone. So our finished floor will be at least a foot above that elevation. As stated earlier, we are proposing a septic system for this site because the nearest force main is 2,600 feet south on Zoysia Lane, or roughly the same distance west over to, is that Old 41 on this side? So it's pretty far away. It's more than a quarter mile, more than half a mile actually. So we need to propose the septic system, and as soon as we get access to public sewer, we would love to abandon the septic system and tie into it, but that's just not feasible at this point. And the estimated demand is pretty low, 400 gallons a day based on 2 restrooms inside the store. And potable water there's a Lee County Utilities potable water main on our side of Laurel Lane that we'll tie into for domestic water. And the building being so small will not be sprinklered at this point. And that concludes my presentation unless you have any questions.
I don't, thank you.
Okay.
Veronica, you had mentioned that there would be a condition that the west-facing wall of the side of the building would act as a buffer wall, and that there would be no doors or windows. And I was looking at the list of conditions, and I did not see that included. Did I miss it?
In the conditions in the conditions.
Oh,
in
here
the
we
staff
go.
report.
Environment, it's under environmental, okay.
You found it quicker than I did.
Okay. Guess I wasn't expecting it to see it there.
For the site does comply with the comprehensive plan. This site does have a future land use classification of suburban, which is predominantly residential, but does permit commercial uses to serve the local community. Nearby uses include both residential and commercial, as previously shown on the proximate commercial uses map. And amending the CPD to permit the proposed use of food market is consistent with policy 1.1.5. Objectives 2.1, development location, and 2.2, development timing. Promote contiguous and compact growth patterns to contain urban sprawl, minimize energy costs, conserve land, water, and natural resources, and direct new growth to those areas where adequate public facilities exist. Policies 2.2.1 and 2.2.2 evaluate rezonings on the availability of adequate road networks, central water and sewer lines, community services, and facilities such as schools, EMS, fire, and police protection, and other relevant factors such that would affect the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. Both Laurel Lane and Hart Drive are major collector roads. The addition of the development will not degrade the level of service of the roads, which you heard from Dean. Fire, police, and EMS are located within 4 miles of this site. Public transit is located on Laurel Lane, and public parks and schools are within proximity to the site. LCU did provide a letter of availability for potable water, and we also have the letter of availability from FGUA. However, again, the applicant will be utilizing sanitary sewer on the site. That leads us to LEED plan standards 4.1.1 water and 4.1.2 sewer. As stated above, the development will connect to potable water, but will utilize the on-site septic system. A protected species survey was included with the application. However, no protected species or endangered species or environmentally sensitive habitats were found on the site. As previously noted, the subject property is located near existing residential properties to the west and south. Land Development Code Section 5.1.5 protects existing and future residential areas from any encroachment of uses that are potentially destructive to the character and integrity of the residential environment. This site layout has been designed with the existing and proposed uses in mind. The applicant did request 4 deviations in order to make reasonable use of the property. Staff did find that all 40 deviations do meet the intent of the Land Development Code to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the adjacent property owners and the general public. And the proposed conditions will minimize any potential impacts to the residential lots to the west or south. Residential and commercial uses have coexisted in Suncoast states for a long time. Earlier in the presentation, I presented a slide of the proximate commercial uses along Laurel Lane, including AMS Roofing to the east of the site, the Brothers Car Care Center north of Laurel Lane, Farmer Jack Market, the Laurel Food Mart and Deli, and there's other gas stations and food stores further west. In addition to the MH1 and MH3 zoning districts, nearby commercial uses include C1, C-1A, and CPD. This site will be required to comply with the buffer landscaping and architectural requirements for commercial developments in the North Fort Myers planning community, except where deviations have been granted. This is consistent with LEED Plan Goal 6, Objectives 6.1, and Policies 6.1.4, 6.1.6, and 6.1.7. The property is located in the North Fort Myers Community Planning area. A public information meeting was held with the North Fort Myers Design Review Panel on October 3rd of 2023. The goal of the North Fort Myers Community Plan is to improve the livability and economic vitality in the North Fort Myers area by promoting compact, mixed-use development in the form of town and neighborhood centers, attracting appropriate investment to revitalize older neighborhoods and commercial corridors, stabilizing and enhancing existing neighborhoods, and preserving natural resources. Suncoast Estates is one of those older communities with a mix of mobile homes and commercial uses. It has been identified as an opportunity zone, the purpose of which is to spur economic growth and job creation in low-income and distressed communities that need revitalizing. Amending this CPD to permit a food store in this community does create employment opportunities. This is consistent with LEAD Plan Goal 30. This site will be designed utilizing best management practice for surface water management at the time of DO permitting. The property is not located in a flowway, nor does it contain wetlands. This subject property is under 1 acre in size, so it will be developed as a small project, which will not require permitting through South Florida Water Management District. Paving, grading, and drainage plans will be included with the site construction plans for the DO and reviewed by staff for consistency with the requirements of the Land Development Code, the LEAD Plan, and any other regulatory agencies. So this is consistent with LEAD Plan policies 60.1.1, 60.4.1, 61.2.4, and so forth. In conclusion, we do believe that the applicant has proven entitlement to this amendment request. The request does comply with the LEAD Plan. It does meet the Land Development Code and other applicable county regulations, or does qualify for deviations. It is compatible with existing uses and planned uses in the area. The access is sufficient to support the proposed development intensity. The expected impacts on transportation facilities will be addressed by existing county regulations and conditions of approval. It does not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas and natural resources. It is served by urban services. In addition, for the planned development, the mix of uses is appropriate at this proposed location. The recommended conditions do provide sufficient safeguards to the public interest and are reasonably related to the impacts of the public's interest expected from the proposed development. The deviations requested do enhance the achievements of the objectives of the planned development, and they do preserve and promote the general intent of the Land Development Code to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. That concludes my presentation. I will provide the revised master concept plan to you by end of day today, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Yes, I have a question. Where might I find commentary on the North Fort Myers Opportunity Zone? I couldn't find it in the LEAD Plan. Is there
It's
a
on
resolution or?
It's on the LEAD Plan website, or the Lee County website,
Okay.
I believe under the planning tab.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Your turn.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, I'm Mary Sue Groff, a senior planner with the Department of Community Development Zoning Section. I've been previously qualified as an expert witness in land use planning, the Lee County Land Development Code, and the Comprehensive Plan, and wish to do so again today.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I do have a copy of my PowerPoint presentation for you.
Thank you. This is Staff Exhibit 3.
Right. Pertaining to DCI 2024-00019 for 2265 Laurel Lane. I will start with the applicant's request and recommendation. The TDM Consulting, Inc., on behalf of Terra Firma Ventures, LLC, has filed an application to amend the master concept plan, schedule of uses, and schedule of deviations for the Ron and Sharon Ratliff commercial plan development from Resolution Z-89-091A. The applicant is proposing a 2,000 square foot building that will contain a food store market with a small restaurant for carryout, and along with an original 6 deviations, of which 2 were withdrawn during the process, so a total of 4 remaining deviations. Staff does recommend approval with conditions. Some background information on the property. The subject property, again, located at 2265 Laurel Lane in North Fort Myers. It consists of one strap number within the North Fort Myers Community Plan area. It is within the suburban future land use category and is currently zoned commercial plan development. A little history on the parcel. Subject property is located within the Suncoast Estates platted subdivision, an older mobile home park, as we've established, originally zoned by a special permit for a trailer subdivision by resolution Z-62-039. As Veronica indicated, it has been identified as an opportunity zone, and historical uses of the Suncoast area are for mobile home residents. Permitted commercial uses exist along the major roadways within Suncoast Estates, excuse me, alongside existing residential neighborhoods, including along Laurel Lane. Some surrounding uses to the property. They are near existing residentially and commercial zoned properties. Lots abutting the property to the south and west are zoned mobile home MH1, and 2 lots to the west of the subject property at 2249 Laurel Lane are zoned commercial C1A and are developed with a convenience store already. Properties to the north across Laurel Lane and east across Hart Drive are zoned mobile home MH3. For the plan development amendment criteria covering Lee Plan LDC section 34-145, following slides will demonstrate how the applicant has met the listed criteria. As previously mentioned, the property's future land use designation is suburban. As part of a future urban and suburban areas, pursuant to objective 1.1.5, the project site is in a designated area for varying intensities that provide for a full range of urban activity. And commercial uses are permitted in the suburban future land use category to serve the local community, and nearby uses include both commercial and residential. The applicant has provided a master concept plan that depicts the conceptual development and includes proposed buffers and development standards intended to ensure compatibility to those surrounding uses. Pursuant to Objective 2.1, the proposed amendment will allow development of an infill project that promotes compact growth patterns. And Objective 2.2 and Policy 2.2.1, they discuss new growth in future urban areas where adequate public facilities exist. As Veronica mentioned, the property is located along the 2-lane collector road of Laurel Lane. Existing infrastructure of water and sewer is in place, and utilities are available to the site. Adequate public facilities, including fire, police, public parks, solid waste, and utilities are available to the site. And there are also public schools and parks that serve the property. For Lee Plan Policy 4.1.1 for water, the applicant did provide the required letter of availability from LCU stating that lines are in operation adjacent to the property and presently have capacity to provide potable water for the estimated flow demand. The applicant, as we know, has indicated that they will be connecting to that potable water service. For Policy 4.1.2 for sewer, they also provided the letter of availability from FGUA, confirming that sanitary sewer lines are in operation adjacent to the subject property and that they do have capacity to provide. But again, as Dean mentioned, the existing lines are roughly 2,400 to 2,600 feet away to the south. And therefore, the applicant intends to utilize a private septic system on site. For 4.1.4 environmental, the applicant has provided the required protected species survey and affiliated environmental maps. Subject property is cleared and routinely mowed and has been surrounded by development and provides sufficient evidence that no environmentally sensitive areas do exist. For objective 5.1.5, the applicant provided MCP was designed to account for the existing surrounding residential uses and protects the residential areas from any uses that are potentially destructive to the character and integrity of the residential environment. The LDC does provide buffer, setback, screening, and architectural requirements to minimize negative impacts associated with commercial uses abutting a residential neighborhood. The applicant has requested a deviation from LDC section 33-1542, which requires a minimum 50-foot setback for commercial structures abutting residential uses to allow for a 29-foot setback to the south abutting large lot subdivision. In addition, a deviation from LDC section 33-1543A, which requires a 30-foot buffer width when high-density development abuts an existing large lot subdivision. They'd like to allow the 14-foot buffer along the south property line with that 8-foot high solid opaque fence with all required vegetation on the outside of the fence. And the applicant has required the 15-foot setback to the west, and county staff has recommended a condition that prior to development order, the MCP must depict that 15-foot type C buffer and a wall on the western side of the lot with no windows or doors along the west facade of the building. And that will ensure a enhanced buffer to that residential use to the west. Goal 6 of LEED Plan for commercial land uses. This seeks to permit orderly and well-planned commercial development at appropriate locations within the county. As already established, the property is located within an established neighborhood that has nearby existing commercial zoning districts, including CPDs C1 and C1A. Access to the proposed development will be facilitated through that one access point on the county-maintained major collector roadway of Hart Drive. And the Lee County DOT did provide a transportation analysis report that stated the project is not anticipated to adversely affect the surrounding roadway system. Again, adequate landscaping and buffering will be provided at time of development, and urban services such as potable water, sanitary sewer, fire, EMS, and police protection are available to serve the proposed development.
Reuse water is available to serve?
I'm sorry?
Did you say reuse water?
No,
I thought you said potable.
yeah, no, potable water and sanitary sewer.
Potable water.
Yeah, potable.
Okay.
For Goal 30, as for the North Fort Myers Planning Community Plan area, as previously discussed, properties are located in Suncoast Estates, an older neighborhood comprised of a mix of residential mobile homes and commercial development. Again, Suncoast has been identified as an opportunity zone, and the proposed development is an infill project promoting compact and mixed-use development, investment to revitalize the neighborhood, and further provides for that mixed development. Business creates employment opportunities for the surrounding community, which is consistent with Goal 30. And further, the applicant did hold that required public information meeting. Excuse me. For Goal 60, the subject property are cleared and routinely mowed, as we've established, and are not located in a flowway and do not contain wetlands. And the applicant stated that paving, grading, and drainage plans will be consistent with the LDC and LEED plan at time of development. Goal 61, the applicant did provide a surface water management narrative indicating the property in its existing state has no defined drainage pattern. Water quantity and quality and attenuation will be provided via a designed interconnected parameter dry detention swale. Dean presented this quite in detail, and it will be prior to off-site discharge to the Laurel Lane roadside swale, and runoff from impervious areas will be directed to the dry detention area via sheet flow. There is no noticeable drainage flow from adjacent properties entering the subject property. The subject properties are collectively under 1 acre, and proposed building will be developed as a small project not requiring a permit through the South Florida Water Management District. For meeting the code and other applicable county regulations, the applicant has acknowledged at the time of development, land development code and other applicable county regulations will be required and considered. The applicant has requested and justified the following 4 deviations for plan development. Deviation 1 seeks relief from LDC section 10-285, which requires a minimum connection separation of 330 feet on major collector roads in a future suburban area, to allow a minimum connection separation of 101 feet between the proposed driveway on Hart Drive and the edge of pavement of Laurel Lane. Laurel Lane is located along the north side of the property, and the subject property is only 100 by 145 feet, making compliance with this 330-foot connection separation impossible. Historic aerials indicate a previous driveway located as far south as Laurel Lane, as far south as, where am I? As far south on Hart Drive. And then there are only other residential driveways in proximity to the subject property on Hart Drive. LCDOT staff requested a cross-access easement to the property directly south to facilitate cross-access in the event that that property is rezoned for commercial use in the future. The proposed cross-access easement will provide an interconnection and reduce access points on Hart Drive. Staff did recommend approval of this deviation. Deviation 2 seeks relief from LDC section 33-1542, which requires any structure other than a single-family, two-family attached, or duplex, or its associated accessory structures to have a minimum setback of 50 feet between the nearest point of the building and an existing large lot residential subdivision. The request is to allow a minimum setback between the proposed commercial building and the residentially zoned lot to the south to be 29 feet. The abutting lot to the south meets the definition of an existing large residential lot per LDC section 33-1537. The minimum required setback for the proposed buildings are 50 feet to the south, 25 feet to the north and east on those right-of-ways, and 15 feet to the west. Again, the subject property is only 100 by 145 feet. That only leaves a space of approximately 25 feet by 105 feet deep for a building. However, those building dimensions do not allow the development to comply with other requirements of the LDC, like parking, drainage, access, and buffers. Complying with the 50-foot setback to the south property line would create such a small building footprint that it would prevent the applicant from reasonable use of their land. And per LDC section 33-1543, the buffer vegetation required between commercial developments and existing large lot residential subdivision is enhanced, and it provides more mature trees and shrubs at time of installation, as well as an increase in the number of trees and shrubs. The vegetation, in addition to the 8-foot high solid opaque wall, will shield the residential lot from the commercial use. The trees and palms are required to be clustered in double rows with a minimum of 3 trees per cluster, and canopy trees must be planted a maximum of 20 feet on center. Palms must be planted in staggered heights with a minimum of 3 palms per cluster, spaced at a maximum of 8 feet on center, with a minimum of 4-foot difference in height between each tree. In addition, all shrubs must be a minimum of 10 gallons, 4 feet in height, with a 3-foot spread, planted 4 feet on center at installation time. Permitting the building setback to be 29 feet from the south property line is not detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. And in addition, the deviation enhances the achievement of the objectives of the plan development. So staff does recommend approval of that deviation as well. Deviation 3 seeks relief from LDC Section 33-1543, which requires landscape buffers for high-density or high-intensity development abutting a subdivided lot in an existing large lot residential subdivision to utilize at minimum a 30-foot wide buffer width. The request is to allow the buffer width to be 14 feet with the 8-foot high opaque wall to the south property line. Again, I think we've established that the lot is small, it's a corner lot. These buffer requirements are already enhanced, therefore the deviation is approved. Deviation 4 seeks relief from LDC Section 34-2192, which requires all buildings and structures be set back a minimum of 25 feet from the adjacent street easement or right-of-way. The request is to allow a minimum building setback of 15 feet from the Laurel Lane right-of-way. Again, as with the other deviation requests, these requirements on a small corner lot prevent other LDC requirements and reasonable use of the property. The applicant is proposing to provide a 15-foot building setback to Laurel Lane along with the 15-foot wide buffer. There is an existing 8-foot wide pedestrian facility along with a planting strip within the 100-foot wide Laurel Lane right-of-way, which provides an additional buffer between the road and the commercial development. Proposed 15-foot building setback permits the development to function as a small commercial development. This is where staff has approved the deviation with a condition that prior to the issuance of a DO, a cross-access easement extending to the abutting property to the south must be depicted on the development order plans. For compatibility with existing and planned uses, again, it is located in an established neighborhood with other nearby existing commercial zoning districts. The schedule of uses is limited and includes accessory uses and structures, ATMs, essential services, and essential services facilities, fences and walls, food stores group 1, accessory parking lot, restaurant group 1 and 2 for carryout only, and signs. And all uses as conditioned are compatible with the surrounding uses. Again, for providing sufficient access to the proposed development will be facilitated through that one access point on the county-maintained major collector roadway of Hart Drive, and the applicant proposes to improve the existing driveway that accesses from Hart Drive to the east. Lee County Department of Transportation did recommend the following condition to limit that future access point on Hart Drive. Again, that cross-access easement extending to the abutting property to the south was the condition put on that. So the expected impacts on transportation, I believe Dean covered this well. They have provided the required TIS. Access to the proposed development will be facilitated through that one access point on the county-maintained major collector of Hart Drive. And DOT Transportation provided a transportation-related analysis stating no anticipated adversely effects will be on the surrounding roadway system. For will not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas. Again, applicant provided the required protected species survey and affiliated environmental maps. The subject property is cleared and routinely mowed and has been surrounded by development, so environmentally sensitive areas are unlikely. The applicant provided surface water management plan narrative did indicate the properties in their existing state have no defined drainage pattern and appear to sheet flow to Laurel Lane roadside swale without benefit of any water quality treatment or attenuation. County environmental staff did visit the site and they did provide a report analyzing the request. They made the following notes for open space. Project does meet the small development definition and will require the 20% open space. Applicant did provide a total open space of 0.13 acres, which is sufficient and beyond, and they have conditioned it then to say that prior to the issuance of DO, the plans must depict the 0.13 acres of open space. For indigenous open space, the LDC requires a large project to provide 50% of the open space through indigenous preservation. It is less than, the subject property is less than 10 acres, is considered a small development, so no indigenous open space is required. The buffers, I won't belabor that too much because I think we've covered that pretty well. To the north, you're going to have a 15-foot type D buffer. To the south, a 14-foot buffer with the 8-foot high opaque wall. To the west, 15-foot type C buffer with the 8-foot high opaque wall with conditions, provided that they don't put windows or doors on that wall. And to the east, a 15-foot buffer. The property will be served by urban services. They are served by LCU and FGUA, the North Fort Myers Shores Fire Protection and Rescue District, the Lee County Sheriff's Office, in addition to public transit schools and parks. And the property is located within a established neighborhood with other nearby existing commercial zoning districts. The recommended conditions provide sufficient safeguards to the public interest, and staff recommends approval of the 4 deviations, finding they do meet the criteria for approval. And in conclusion, the request for the amendment meets the review criteria established in LDC section 34-145. Therefore, we do recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Clarification on the date of the public information meeting. I saw in the staff report that it was held in May, but I thought I heard Veronica testify to October 2023, and I just want to confirm it is in fact May 7th, 2024.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I will leave the written record open until 4 p.m. tomorrow for a substitute master concept plan that will replace the MCP we have on record and will be transferred to the board along with my recommendation. I've already conducted a site visit on this site, and I will be working on my recommendation probably starting tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
What determines when a plan development amendment is decided here at the hearing examiner level versus being sent to the board for their approval?
Well, you have to talk to the county attorney's office for how they're splitting those hairs, but my understanding was if it's not an intensification of the existing plan, that it could be handled administratively. But they may also be including, if there's a change of use, then you might have to go to public hearing. But they'll give you the finer points of that. I don't think they've been laid out specifically in the land development code or the administrative code. That might be something to circle back to in a future amendment to provide more guidance there.
I was hoping it was here.
Well, I don't know. Is it final here? Can somebody give me a confirmation on that?
I wasn't sure, and I can confirm with Anthony and see if he has
Check
any.
with Anthony and Joe Adams.
And Joe Adams,
And if
okay.
you send me something by 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon when I get this master concept plan, I will issue a decision rather than a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Usually I'm told at the beginning of the hearing what it's going to be, but let's get that
Okay.
from the county attorney, just to be sure.
Okay.
Just quick question. You didn't swear us in, so did you need to do that?
Okay, yeah, sorry about that.
Even though it's after the fact?
Yes, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you gave in this morning's hearing was the truth?
I do.
I do.
I didn't even notice.